Now let's just be honest, there's some really stupid reasons to upgrade your motorcycle, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. While you may be considering an upgrade for a variety of different reasons, today I'm going to give you the 7 worst reasons to upgrade and some things that you can do that will hopefully help you out, but not put you in a position that you really don't need to be in. Now, of course, these are just my opinions. They're strong ones. I believe in them, but I want to hear yours as well, because I know 1 or 2 may ruffle some feathers, but that's fine. I want to get us all talking, and whatever your opinion is, whether you agree or disagree, leave that down below. Let's go and get right into it. Now, you've had your beginner bike for a while, and one of the most popular things that people will say to themselves when they're looking to upgrade is, I've outgrown this thing. But one thing you got to consider is, have you really outgrown your motorcycle, and how can you tell? Well, there's one solid way to tell if you've outgrown your motorcycle. Can you handle the bike at slow speeds? And I don't just mean starting and stopping. I mean doing figure eights, doing U-turns, being able to handle that motorcycle and go in a straight line at a very slow speed, doing emergency stops. Do you feel comfortable with any of this? Have you even tried it? Trust me, it seems really easy. When you watch people do it, you're like, oh yeah, if I needed to do a U-turn on a 16, 17, 18-foot road, whatever, I could easily do that on this bike. But until you try it and until you feel what that lean is like, yeah, there's a certain fear level. Now, some people don't have a high fear level. They just don't know how to actually commit or do these things. And look, I'm no professional here. I'm just telling you the straight up truth when it comes to outgrowing a motorcycle, because I've made this mistake. Well, the riding season is coming to an end for a lot of people in the country, but come spring, one of you is going to be taking out your tricked out 2020 Iron 883 out on the road, provided to you by yours truly. I've partnered up with Van of Them, who is a small veteran-owned company, to once again give y'all an opportunity to win something awesome. Now, I partner with those guys for a couple different reasons. First of all, they're veterans, and I love supporting veterans. Also, they keep the time frame small, which keeps the pool of entries small. So it actually gives you a real chance of winning something awesome. Even if your odds suck like mine, you still have a chance to win something cool. The first time it was less than 400 entries. This time will be even less than that. But you only have a couple of weeks to enter left on this thing. December 13th at midnight Pacific Standard Time, this giveaway is going to end. So if you want a chance to win the 2020 Iron 883 that's going to be tricked out with Reinhardt's, Saddleman seat, custom dynamics, protection, sissy bar, all of that kind of stuff, make sure that you click the link in the description. That'll send you to Headshot Nation. Not only will you get access to the best motorcycling community on the entire internet, where you can start your own threads, you can communicate with me back and forth, you can also get ad-free, exclusive, and early access to videos all in one place. It is a fantastic place to be. But again, December 13th, it's going to get cut off. So make sure you get those entries in. Can't wait to see who wins and takes home the 2020 Iron 883. Good luck to every single one of you. Hell, I've made a lot of mistakes when it comes to motorcycling, which is why I'm willing to share them, because regardless of how you feel, you definitely need to know how to work that motorcycle at slow speeds. Now, that's not the only factor to look at when you're considering an upgrade, but this is one of the most important ones when it comes to outgrowing your motorcycle. If you can't handle a smaller motorcycle, doing a figure eight, doing U-turns, all this kind of stuff, weaving in between cones, there's so many different exercises. But if you can't handle that stuff on a smaller, lighter motorcycle, trying to learn it on a bigger one, you can absolutely do it, but it will make the process harder, and it may even take you longer to learn how to do this stuff. Get with a good trainer, somebody that knows what they're doing. I went to Be the Boss of Your Motorcycle because I like Robert, and I think he does a great job, right? But at the end of the day, whether you're doing it online or you go to somebody, make sure you can do this stuff before you actually upgrade and make it harder on yourself down the line. Another reason that people say I need to upgrade is because I want to be able to carry my passenger. But considering what I just said, the last thing you want to do is introduce somebody else on a motorcycle that you can't properly handle. Now, this is assuming that you can't do those U-turns and slow speed maneuvers, right? You may think, oh, well, I have a passenger seat and whatever, I can handle a passenger, right? If I need to get out of the way quickly or turn from a stop or any number of things, I can absolutely do that. But can you? Have you actually tried it in a parking lot? Have you adjusted yourself and had your passenger, can you do it by yourself? And more importantly now, if you can do it by yourself, the techniques are the same, but you have to consider the extra weight. Pretty much every good trainer out there tell you your instincts on a motorcycle are dead wrong, right? It's always the opposite of what you think, especially when it comes to slow speed. And the reason I say all of this is not simply to kind of put you down or make you feel bad about it, but at the end of the day, if your significant other, whoever that is, can't understand that you're keeping them off the bike until you're totally comfortable, I think that's probably the way I would phrase it. Look, I love you enough to tell you no to keep you off the bike because I got to learn this stuff. And then once I learn it, get you on the back and boom, we can, start practicing that way as well. Then once I'm feeling really good about my abilities, I put you on the back because I know that I'm putting you in a little bit of increased danger, right? But the safer you are and the more you know, the better you are at slow speed. Equates to safer riding all the way around, and you know that you can get you and your passenger out of the way in case some kind of accident or mishap presents itself. What about group rides? This is another reason that people will find themselves upgrading because they're always the person that falls behind in the pack. Well, at the end of the day, this is where you have to consider the group of friends you're riding with, because a good group of friends, regardless of what your skill level is or regardless of what you're riding, will stick with you throughout the entire ride. They're going to make sure that you're comfortable. They're going to make sure that you're in a good position. They're not going to say, hey man, you need to upgrade that bike. Let's say you've had it for a month and you have basically zero experience. If you have a friend that's telling you, hey man, you need to get one of the big baggers so you can keep up with us, that's not a friend that you want necessarily when you're doing something like this. It's not like buying a bigger boat, right? That comes with additional headaches as well. But sometimes what you need is not a bigger boat, but maybe one less person to put in the boat to give yourself more space and room, if you know what I'm saying. Now, riding with friends is a fantastic thing, and that can really, get you excited and keep you excited about motorcycling. And I love riding with another friend or two. I think it's awesome, right? But at the end of the day, you need people that are going to be looking out for your best interests too. It doesn't mean they necessarily need to be holding your hand, but taking bad advice when it comes to something like motorcycling that already has additional risks, not a great idea. Make sure you're getting good advice from friends that don't care what you ride. And at the end of the day, there's always things that you can add to your motorcycle, your current motorcycle, to make it more comfortable when it comes to those longer rides, whether that's fairings, saddlebags, better seats, etc. Now, another reason people find themselves upgrading is simply boredom. Now, you need to identify why you're bored. Is it simply because you don't have anybody to ride with? Is it the motorcycle, or is it you? If you don't have anybody to ride with, all you have to do is look up certain events in certain areas, bike nights, Harley events, Indian events, Honda events, whatever, or look for certain groups on Facebook even, right? I know that's kind of an old man's thing to say now, Facebook. But at the end of the day, these are things that you can do to get yourself introduced to other like-minded riders. And there's riders of all kinds. You have veterans that ride together. You have Second Amendment advocates that ride together. You have churches that ride together. So there's a lot of different people that you can meet in a lot of groups, and wherever you feel comfortable, boom, you can easily meet people. Maybe it's the lack of places to go. Maybe you have a good riding buddy, or maybe you like riding by yourself. Either way, and you're like, man, dude, I get so bored of these roads. This is something I suffer with a lot. This is where it's really good to get out of town. Now, it's kind of a double-edged sword because you get out of town, you go to some nice roads, you go up to the mountains. I live in a very flat area, so I go up to the mountains and I ride. It's challenging to an extent, and it's new, and it's exciting, and all your senses are popping off because you're somewhere new on your bike. And then you come back, and you're like, oh my God, that place was so great. You come back to wherever you're living, whatever, and you're like, oh, dude, this sucks. There's some motorcycle routes, there's some apps, there's other things you can use. And you may have to go out a little bit further, but you can find some really nice routes and roads in your area that maybe you didn't even know about. Hell, you can make your own route. And again, it may just be a matter of you and a buddy or a couple buddies or whatever going out for the day to find some of these places. But fortunately, there's some good apps and stuff out there where you can find some new routes. If that's not the problem, maybe it's not the bike, maybe it's you. Maybe you don't find enjoyment in motorcycling like you thought you would. So buying a bigger bike, taking on a bigger payment with interest rates the way they are on motorcycles, especially through some loan companies, at the end of the day, it's going to do nothing but put you further into debt when really maybe motorcycling isn't for you because it's not for everybody. Now, I did a fantastic video talking about reasons you should not quit riding until you actually look at everything as a whole. Sometimes it's a matter of just adding on a new part, buying a motorcycle part of some kind. Hey, maybe the wife doesn't approve, but at the end of the day, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. In pretty much anything, especially in this department. Buy yourself a new motorcycle part. Maybe it'll get you excited for motorcycling once again. It may not be that you hate motorcycling or maybe it's not for you. It could just simply be boredom with the bike. Add on a new part or two, see if that brings your excitement back up. If you don't find yourself getting excited, even after trying all this stuff, again, maybe it's just not for you. Now here's a big reason that people like to upgrade motorcycles, and that is something that's really hard to argue with, but I want to throw it out there, and that's comfort, right? So again, we've talked about adding a passenger and some of the needs that you think you may have for a motorcycle, but comfort is one of those things that, yes, getting a bigger motorcycle, it's going to be more comfortable. You're going to have more creature comforts. You're going to have radio and Bluetooth and, you know, your stereo and speakers, all this kind of stuff, right? So there's no denying that a bigger bike is just more comfortable on the road. But a bigger motorcycle, even though I really like baggers, right? I think they're great for pretty much anything out there, to be quite honest with you. It's not always the answer, right? Again, adding a seat or a set of handlebars or even a mini fairing to your own motorcycle could provide all the comfort that you need. You know, if you're just commuting back and forth to work, do you necessarily need a $30,000 bagger to do that, to be a little bit more comfortable for 45 minutes at a time? Maybe. Maybe you can do that. Absolutely, 100%. On the Street Glide Special, that's all I did on that bike. I think I put 7,500 miles on it in a year. I rode that thing back and forth to work pretty much every single day. I mean, rain, shine, heat, humidity, down to, you know, super cold, freezing weather. I loved that bike and I loved everything it had to offer. But I paid for it too, right? There was a lot of money tied up in that motorcycle with payments and accessories and everything else. So that's one thing you got to consider too. Sometimes it's just a matter of upgrading the things that are currently on your bike. And while you can get some really cool accessories and cool upgrades with the bigger bikes, and I love them, is it totally necessary for you? Maybe, maybe not though. Now here's one that does have some merit, but I still don't think it necessarily justifies an upgrade. Again, unless you're kind of gone through all these things and you're like, dude, I actually do know my motorcycle. I've mastered this thing, right? Or, you know, now my needs have changed or whatever. Okay, so again, if you're looking to upgrade, you do whatever the heck you want. I just want to throw that out there. But being able to be seen on your bike, a bigger bike, in some cases, you can actually be seen a lot. I noticed this on my Sportster when I rode that a lot. People would pull out in front of me all the frickin' time. Then I got my Street Glide, and well, it seemed like less people pulled out in front of me. When I got my Road Glide, it seemed like even less people pulled out in front of me. Now I'm always anticipating that, but at the end of the day, I've noticed that is the case. But that doesn't mean you have to upgrade again to a $30,000 or $20,000, $20,000 or $30,000, whatever motorcycle. Better lighting is something you can add, and there's so many ways to do it where it's not tacky and it looks good. Go to Custom Dynamics. Type in whatever kind of bike you have, and boom, you can add auxiliary lights, fairing lights, LED headlights, that's something we're doing with the Iron because I believe in it so much. The turn signals is another thing, right? They have the white ring around them, so you have more light there. Even using simple techniques, like doing a little dip, that's something I learned from MC Ryder, right? Something he said a long time ago that's always stuck with me. If you're kind of going in a straight line and you have kind of the stale green light where there's somebody looking to turn left, especially, something like that. Even somebody looking to turn right from an adjacent road, sometimes just adding a little dip and a little movement there can kind of bring attention to you, because otherwise you're just going in a straight line. Your profile is obviously smaller than any vehicle out there, so sometimes that can bring more attention to you. So obviously it's a different day. I don't want you to think that you just clicked on a different video accidentally, or you know, some version of the Twilight Zone just happened. No, it's the same video, just a different day for me. But the magic of editing means you get this video all in one day. So let's go ahead and move on to the next point. And one of the potential stupid reasons to upgrade, and that's not having an accident, not having a close call. Now, the last thing I want you to think is that Headshot is promoting putting people in bad situations, because I'm not. But what I want you to consider is that the longer you ride, especially when you first start, and nothing happens, no close calls, no accidents, no nothing, you're like, you may think in your head, like, dude, I'm really good at this. I'm probably at least top 5%, you know, when it comes to motorcycle riding. I'm actually better than all these guys on the internet. You know, they're really awful. They put themselves in bad situations. And some of them do. I mean, that's just the fact of it. Some people shouldn't be on motorcycles, admittedly, right? But at the end of the day, there are things that happen to motorcyclists that are beyond your control. And the longer you do something, it's almost like, man, I've gotten really good at this because nothing's happened. But that is not always the case. You get good by getting good in a parking lot, or by learning from people that are really good and learning this skill. You don't become good at riding motorcycles just because you've done it for a long time without an incident. That's a blessing. That's great. That's what we all want. But that does not mean you're ready to upgrade from that Rebel 300 to a brand new road or street glide. Doesn't mean that you should take your Kawasaki Ninja 500 or whatever and go up to a leader bike because now you think you're better than what you actually are. Remember, you don't want to be in a bad situation. You always want to be looking out for things that can happen. There's a lot to think about when you're riding a motorcycle, and you want to protect yourself and be safe out there. But just because you haven't had an incident doesn't mean that you're ready to upgrade that bike, especially if you haven't done some of the things that I've talked about in this very video. So complacency can lead to some really bad situations sometimes. So just keep that in mind. And the last dumb reason to upgrade a motorcycle is thinking that, man, I'm going to take this bike across the country. I'm going to go anywhere with this new motorcycle. But if you don't have real intentions on doing that, it could just be something that's costing you extra money for no real reason. Now, I'm not sitting here projecting on you guys and saying, you know, that having different riding experiences or getting to different places to be able to ride, having a more comfortable experience, all of that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to discount that at all, because that is a real reason, you know, to actually want to upgrade a motorcycle. But if you have all these like grand master plans, but you know that I can't even get away from my job for a couple of days, much less a week or two that it would take to do a cross-country trip. It's just not maybe feasible for you. Now again, if you're doing this solely for the possible intentions of doing that, but then you're like, hey, I want a more comfortable commuter as well, dude, go for it. I mean, at the end of the day, you do what you want to do. It's your money, you spend it how you want. But I did the same thing with the Street Glide Special. I had all these master plans of taking this thing, you know, to Sturgis and Daytona and all this kind of stuff. And it wasn't until I started doing this full time that I'm able to actually have the time to do that, right? So that bike ended up being a commuter for me, and I was okay with it, to be honest with you. And sometimes it works out where it's like, oh man, it's just a different bike. I really like it. and it ends up being an okay experience. But if you know you don't really have the time and you're not going to be able to make the time or anything like that, it could just be simply a waste of money. Set your goals and set them high. That's something that I do just personally, right? It's not just with motorcycles, but it's with everything. I set my goals really, really high. And sometimes you fall short of those. But if they're unrealistic goals, just try to, sometimes you have to come back down to earth and say, okay, this may not be feasible, but this could be, right? An overnight trip to the mountains, totally doable. Maybe not everything else I wanted to do. So maybe it's worth it to upgrade, maybe it's not. But it could be one of those things where you're just getting yourself in a situation where you're paying more money for a bike you were doing the same thing with that you were doing with the other motorcycle. So there you go. But that's just my opinion, and I want to hear yours. Have there ever been some really dumb reasons that you upgraded your motorcycle and you ended up regretting it? Or maybe you ended up loving the new motorcycle even though it didn't fit the bill of what you initially wanted it to do. Let me know down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold it down.